It happened on an ordinary evening that turned extraordinary. James, a single dad in his early 30s, had taken his little daughter, Lily, out for dinner at a small family restaurant on the edge of town. Life had been tough since his wife passed away 2 years earlier. He was still learning how to balance work, fatherhood, and the endless stream of responsibilities that never seemed to let up. Money was always tight, but he wanted Lily to feel like they could still have small joys. That night, a simple meal out felt like a gift. Their waitress, a young woman named Emily, had greeted them warmly. She smiled at Lily, complimented her hair clips, and treated them with such kindness that James felt a rare sense of ease. She was clearly working hard, rushing from table to table, but she never let her stress show in her voice. As James watched her move around the room, he couldn't help but admire her determination. It reminded him of himself, someone carrying more weight than they let on. Everything seemed fine until the moment that changed the night. Emily had just brought over Lily's plate of pasta when suddenly her face shifted. She paused mid-step, her tray rattling slightly. Then, to James's shock, she stopped breathing. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, her lips turning pale. Time seemed to freeze. Other diners stared in confusion, unsure of what was happening, but no one moved. James's heart kicked into overdrive. Without hesitation, he jumped up, quickly telling Lily to stay in her seat. He caught Emily as she collapsed, lowering her gently to the floor. Panic rose in the air around them, voices gasping, chairs scraping back, but James focused only on her. He checked for her pulse, weak and fading, and realized she needed help immediately. Years ago, his wife had taught him CPR when she was training to be a nurse. At the time, he never imagined he'd have to use it. But now, it came rushing back. He started chest compressions, his voice steady but urgent as he shouted for someone to call 911. He breathed into her lungs, prayed silently for her to come back, and kept pressing. The restaurant fell silent except for the desperate rhythm of his hands. For a moment, it felt like the longest night of his life. He could hear Lily softly crying at the table, whispering, "Daddy, please help her." That whisper gave him strength he didn't know he had. Finally, after what felt like forever, Emily gasped, a sharp, shaky breath that filled the room with relief. Her eyes fluttered open, tears streaking her face. James leaned back, his own chest heaving, his hands trembling from both exhaustion and adrenaline. The sound of sirens grew louder as paramedics rushed in, taking over with professional precision. James backed away, letting them do their work, but the look of gratitude in Emily's eyes as they lifted her onto the stretcher would stay with him forever. The restaurant slowly returned to its chatter, but for James, everything had shifted. He sat back down with Lily, holding her hand tightly, his heart still pounding. One of the paramedics approached him before leaving, saying, "If you hadn't stepped in when you did, she wouldn't have made it. You saved her life." James nodded quietly, not knowing what to say. A week later, James returned to the restaurant, uncertain if he'd see Emily again. But there she was, pale but smiling, alive. She came over to their table, this time not as their waitress but as a friend. She thanked him with tears in her eyes, saying she had no family nearby and that if not for him, she wouldn't be standing there. Lily hugged her tightly, as if she'd known all along they were meant to be part of each other's lives. That night taught James something he had almost forgotten. Sometimes, even in the middle of ordinary struggles, we are given moments where we become the answer to someone else's prayer. He didn't just save a life that night, he reminded himself, and his daughter, that courage, love, and quick action can turn strangers into family in an instant. The story spread quietly around town, but for James and Emily, it wasn't about recognition. It was about a single dad who refused to freeze when it mattered most, a waitress who was given a second chance, and a little girl who saw her father become a real-life hero. And in that small Canadian restaurant, life proved once again how fragile, and how precious, it truly is.